So, welcome back to the Players Corner. Today we have former Cornell field hockey player and current USA field hockey player Caroline Ramsey with us today. Thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to start with everybody's favorite segment, the fan questions. And our first question comes from podcast bestie Fia, um, who asked, "What's the hardest part of the transition from college to international field hockey?"
Um, I think that the hardest part about the transition, looking at just the game alone, is just the speed of the game. Um, like you get to college and you think college is fast, but then I remember the first national team camp I went to, and I was just like, I felt like a fish out of water. I was like, oh my gosh, I like can't even keep track of where the ball is going. So I think that definitely was like the hardest adjustment going to international field hockey, but then also just like treating your sport like your job and not just like something you're doing alongside school. Especially since I graduated last year, that's been a big transition for me. And I'm loving it, but it's definitely different having it be like your entire day versus just a snippet of your day. But it's been awesome.
So, our last fan question is Claire asks, what goes through your head before and during a drag flick?
Oh, okay. Um, before, so in college, and sometimes on the national team, they'll tell you where they want the flick going. So that takes that consideration out of my head, which is great. But then sometimes, like especially in scrimmages on the national team and stuff, it will be up to me. So that's more based off of as I'm going up there, like how confident I was feeling in warm-ups, going to a different corner or whatever. But then once I figure that out, I try really hard to visualize myself going through the motion once or twice before the corner starts. So like as DPC is getting their gear on, I will like actually like see the ball come out, see my run up, like feel my body go through the motions, and then see the ball go to wherever it's supposed to be going, whether it's like a corner of the cage or a tipper. But the most important thing before I flick is just taking a couple deep breaths to slow my heart rate down, because I learned in college that if I go into it super nervous, I'll just be stiff and not go through it how I'm used to going through it. So taking a couple deep breaths and just trusting that I know what I'm doing was a big learning experience for me, but has helped me a lot with my flick. And then as I go through it, nothing like once you practice it for a while, like your body kind of feels the movements. Like when I was learning how to flick, would fall asleep and I could feel my body doing the motions still. So I think my brain and my body knows what it's doing going through the motions, but as I'm actually doing it, I'm just trying to focus on staying low and going through it fast. That's really it. I try to not think about too much as I do it.
All right, so we're going to move into the actual questions now, and we're going to start with probably the player's least favorite question,
Okay.
which is, can you describe yourself without mentioning field hockey?
Just as a person.
Yep. You could do just like random adjectives. You can talk about, I think Amanda probably talked about how much she loves her dog.
Yeah, things you like, what you like
Literally
to
anything.
do. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Wasn't expecting that one. Um, I think the biggest thing for me is I'm very family oriented. My immediate family, but also my extended family is super close. Like I was just in an apartment with my family and five of my extended family members for like 2 weeks over Christmas. So with like 30 other extended family members, an apartment over pretty much. So we have a lot of family time, and I think that like staying close to my family members is probably the most important thing about me. But in general, I think I'm pretty dedicated to things I'm passionate about. I always kind of have been like the mom of the friend group. I'm pre-med, I'm studying for the MCAT. So I want to eventually, after I'm done with hockey, I want to go into medicine. So I think that kind of is like the epitome of being the mom of a friend group. Um, but I don't know. I think that I try to do things to my full 100% ability. And I'm pretty dedicated with that, but also I try to be pretty easygoing at the same time, and kind. That's probably the biggest one my parents taught me growing up. I try to be as kind as possible.
I'm surprised how many people on this team are pre-med or pre like some type of science field.
Yeah,
It kind
that's
of like I mean, I'm exercise science and I was like pre-athletic training, so like I get it, but at the same time it always like baffles me.
Yeah, yeah, it is crazy. I feel like for me with sports too, it's just like science, but also like exercise science and like kind of I worked at an orthopedic hospital a couple summers ago. So like anything in like the orthopedic realm, I feel like with athletes, it's just like I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like this is what I'm used to. This makes sense in like a completely different way than looking at it from like an athlete's perspective. But in the same sense, it's like, oh, like I get this. This is like what I'm used to, kind of thing.
all right. So we're gonna go back to talking about the drag flick just for a couple
Mhm.
seconds. So first of all, like how yeah, how to word this. So the drag flick is obviously like very pivotal on like say the international stage. Like it's often used a lot more. So how is that something that you like kind of integrated into your college game per se?
So I actually started learning how to drag flick my freshman year of college. I was like the last recruit in my class, wild card recruit. When I committed to Cornell, Cornell was ranked in like the upper 60s, lower 70s, um, out of like 80 whatever teams. So I was never thinking field hockey was in my future beyond college. But then freshman preseason, my coach was like, come out to practice early. And I thought he was going to tell me I was never going to play. And so the negative talk got going. But then he was like, okay, we're going to learn how to drag flick. And I was like, I don't even really know what that is, but okay. And I started learning. COVID hit my freshman year. So then I had a lot of time on my hands at home. And I was like, okay, like my coach liked to rely on one thing for corners. So I was like, okay, if this is going to be like my team's relying on me to score on corners with this drag flick, then I want to get as strong as I possibly can get at this skill. Um, and I'm someone who likes to be busy. So COVID was not a fun time just sitting around at home. Thank goodness my siblings and I are all super competitive and played like pickup basketball in our driveway all the time. But anyway, I spent a lot of time learning how to flick, going through those motions, and then got back to school. My college coach is a phenomenal drag flicking coach. So he really helped me like hone in on the skills that I kind of started adapting by myself when I was learning during COVID. And that first season back, I I think I was somewhere in the 20s in goals across the season. So it all of a sudden started getting really successful. And I think a lot of that is because my team relied on the drag flick all the time on corners. So every single corner was a drag flick. So that really let me practice flicking under high pressure situations a lot, which I think helped me grow a lot as a flicker.
So for viewers that are unfamiliar with Cornell in 2023, they had the highest corner conversion percentage mainly due to your drag flick. So what do you think is your secret to mastering the drag flick or for anyone who may want to try it and add it to their repertoire?
Well, kind of a side note, I think that corner conversion rates, even though my name was always on the scoring chart, it has a lot to do with the entire corner unit. And so that was my fifth year season. My sister, who's actually like my best friend, she was the number one inserter on our team. So I knew her insert like inside and out. And she had a heck of a reliable insert. And then our stick stopper too, like I knew all of her tendencies, and she was just like automatic with stick stopping. So I think that like I definitely had a big role in us having a super successful corner conversion rate, but at the same time, if you look at it as a unit, like we just operated as a whole APC unit so well, and like everyone rushing in on rebounds, like they would rush in knowing, like trusting that I was going to aim properly, so they weren't scared to run into wherever they were supposed to go, thinking a drag flick could go awry or anything. So I think that that's a huge part of it. And something on the national team we work on a lot is like learning the inserter speeds, learning the stick stoppers tendencies and stuff like that. But then with the drag flick specifically, honestly, it just takes a lot of time to learn how to do it, and giving yourself grace when you're learning the skill, I think is super important. Because as you learn how to flick, you'll go on this like upward trajectory, and you're like, within a month, you're like, oh my God, I'm getting the hang of this. Like, this is going great. And then you plateau. And then you try to work on the like specific little parts of the flick. And then all of a sudden your drag flick gets worse, but then it gets better. And like, it's extremely frustrating. And as a perfectionist, it was really, really difficult mentally. But I think if anyone's learning how to flick, the biggest thing I could say is understand that it is going to take a lot of time to learn the skill and to become very strong at the skill. So give yourself that time, but also make sure you're putting in the effort to learn it. Like I was through COVID out on my blacktop flicking, trying to flick, and then we got a little bit of turf in my yard trying to flick for like 2 hours, like an hour to 2 hours every single day. I was trying to figure it out for all of COVID. And then ever since then, I've just kept going, practicing as much as I can. So I think that like having the discipline to also keep at the skill is super important. And I feel like that's probably the best advice I could give to someone trying to learn. I think that my secret sauce is definitely like my strength off the field and in the weight room has helped my flick get a lot stronger. But I think that's just like a tiny little part of my drag flick becoming successful. I think the discipline to learning the skill and the grace you have to give yourself while you're learning the skill is the more important part to someone learning.
All right, so now we're gonna fast forward a little bit. I mean, it's like 3 months to the Hockey Fives World Cup. So you competed in the this word gets me every time. Inaugural Hockey Fives World Cup. What was it like being in basically a World Cup for what's essentially a brand new sport?
It was crazy. Had no idea what to expect at all. Had no idea what to expect going to Oman to begin with, let alone a Hockey Fives World Cup. That's never happened before. But it was an awesome group we went with, and the investment that the hockey community, but also Oman put into the Hockey Fives World Cup was so cool to be a part of. Yeah, that I had no expectations going into it, and it was definitely a learning experience, learning how to play hockey fives, but it also was like such a cool life experience and just hockey experience for me. Yeah, it was pretty neat.
All right. How did training for the Hockey Fives World Cup differ for prep from like typical national team competitions, if it did at all?
Yes. Yeah, we actually didn't prep that much. We had one training weekend before we left for Oman, and then had a little bit of training time in Oman before the game started. But I think there was a lot of small gameplay, obviously, because Hockey Fives is way smaller, but then also just there was a lot of off the field learning because the game was a lot different. And I guess it doesn't necessarily differ from normal national team competitions because we'll be going over our presses all the time, film all the time, everything like that. But you're not learning a new game. I think to prep for the World Cup, it was everyone sitting down and Rachel Dawson was like, okay, this is like the in and out of hockey fives. Like these are going to be our tactics, but it's because like hockey fives really is going to focus on X, Y, and Z. So it definitely was a growth experience for all of us, I think. So I think like the mental prep was definitely pretty high.
Do you think that hockey fives has more of a translation to indoor or outdoor?
Ooh. I never played too much indoor because I played ice hockey through high school. So hockey fives reminds me a lot of ice hockey actually. Um, but I definitely think it relates more to indoor for sure and just has a little bit more freeness that I feel like you get with outdoor compared to what I've seen with indoor, in terms of like being able to lift the ball and stuff. But it definitely, I think, in terms of like gameplay, is a lot more similar to indoor.
So now fast forwarding probably like 3 weeks. Um, what was your initial reaction when you got asked to join the centralized training squad last February?
I was really excited. Obviously, building up to an Olympics is a pretty crazy time to join a group. Um, so I was definitely nervous, but really excited just to like be a part of the buildup and be a part of the team. Um, it was definitely daunting and it definitely took a lot out of me. Probably not the best time to centralize into a group, like during the height of training to go to an Olympics. Um, but it was a really cool experience for sure.
So after the Olympics was over, you were one of the few players that remained centralized in Charlotte throughout the fall. What kind of went in that decision for you to stay in Charlotte during that time?
I think that I think that when I centralized last spring, right before Paris, it was a really tough time to work into the group just because the focus, obviously, as it should have been, was on Paris and the prep was insane, both physically and mentally, to ramp the team up to get to Paris and to perform at Paris. So I think that part of me just wanted to get my footing in the group a little bit better, because I didn't feel like I was able to do that as much leading up to Paris. Um, but then also I started studying for the MCAT, because I'm taking it this in a few months actually. So to be able to be local, like in the US and not go abroad to play, but to be able to be in the US training and kind of have a better idea of what my schedule would look like so that I could also work in studying was an important factor in my decision too.
All right, so now we're gonna jump into like, what we actually are supposed to talk about, New Zealand. Uh, so you guys left on Wednesday because we're filming this today. It's going up Sunday. We love time. So what is your schedule for this tour look like?
So we have 4 games, because it is quite a trip to get there. We don't have our first game for like the first week we're there. So we get there. Obviously, the first 2 days we're there, we're not doing too much hockey because we just sat on a plane for seven. I think the flight from Dallas to Auckland is like 17 hours. So definitely making sure our bodies are ready to play is the first bit once we get there. And then we have 4 games within 5 days, I think, 6 days. So it definitely is going to be a test not only of our field hockey skills, but of making sure we're at up to speed on our hockey fitness for sure. Um, but yeah, it's a pretty quick tour actually. It's only like 2.5 weeks or something, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So get there, train a little bit, have a couple games, and come home.
A quick sidebar for my viewers watching this. They're live streaming two of the games. One of them is at 1 a.m., so I will be watching. I don't think anyone else in the world will be watching. I think the other one is at like 7 a.m.
1 a.m.
Yeah, I'm like, do I go to bed or do I just stay up? I don't know.
Yeah, no.
The late
That's-
one.
so this New Zealand tour, is this the longest tour that you've ever been on?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I went to Argentina with the national team on like a training tour 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And I think that was a similar time commitment. And then I think the longest tour I probably went on was a U21 tour for the Junior World Cup when we went to South Africa. I think that was closer to 3 weeks, but it's definitely pushing one of the longer ones for sure.
How do you prepare yourself for going on a tour that is this long? Like there'll be time zone adjustments and things like that. What is kind of like the mental prep for that?
So time zone is definitely a big one with this one. Our athletic trainer, Hannah, she sent out like a schedule to help us adjust to the time zone better. So that's like staying up tonight till like 1 a.m. and waking up at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and then do's and don'ts for when you're supposed to sleep on the plane so that we adjust better once we get there. Obviously, it's all follow it by choice, but I think with such a big time difference, a lot of us are choosing to follow it. So that's probably that commitment or that preparation. Mentally, I think that just kind of, I think it goes into whether I'm going on tour or for friendly games in Charlotte, just kind of making sure that like I'm ready to play my game and feeling good about my game. Obviously with Christmas right before, everyone was doing all of their fitness and weight room training on their own. So that probably what looked a little different than how things normally look before you go on tour since it was the holidays. But I don't know. I think a lot of us are just getting excited to play since these are our first official games post Paris. So our first official games of the new cycle leading up to 2028. So I think it's just high energy and excitement, which is pretty fun.
So, despite being on a couple of rosters and being in unofficial matches, this somehow is your first senior cap, which I find extremely hard to believe. So how are you feeling about getting your first senior cap?
I'm excited. It's definitely been a roller coaster. I actually didn't do any USA anything through my junior year of college. And then after that junior season, which is the first season where I actually was flicking a lot and successful at it, the U21 team reached out to me to go try out. And I kind of was like, whoa, never saw this, literally never saw this coming. And I was like, that sounds like such a cool experience. Genuinely thought I was going to go to the tryout. It was going to be a cool experience and I was going to come home and that was going to be it. And that was in like February of, I don't even know what year that was anymore, but February of my junior year of college. And then I ended up going to the Junior World Cup in April of that year and then technically officially making the national team, the senior national team roster in July of that year. So I went from never thinking USA was a potential possibility for me to being on the senior team roster within like 7.5 months. So I think that was a really big roller coaster experience for me mentally. And then since then, that was summer of 2022. So since then, I've been on the senior team roster and haven't had an official senior cap. So I think that's also been a bit of a roller coaster experience for sure. And I think it's been about a lot of growth for me, I think. Especially given how quickly I got involved in USA stuff. I think that there was a lot of growth I needed to accomplish. But kind of just kept working on it and kept working at my skills. And So now I'm feeling pretty good about it and I'm excited about it, which should be good.
So kind of going off of that, like there's a good mix of newcomers and veterans on this tour. So you're someone who's like kind of in the middle. You aren't capped, but you have experience like being centralized with the team. So how can you kind of use that experience with like just training with the senior team to help kind of the new players?
I think that my position on the team gives me a unique lens because I can wholeheartedly relate to the girls coming in that haven't really been a part of the senior program. But at the same time, I think I have more confidence and more um, just belief in myself that I didn't necessarily have when I first started doing national women's senior team stuff. So I think that my goal going into this is to be a leader and to lead by example and to kind of have a role as a centralized player, but at the same time, I think I have a very close relationship with myself being a new player on the team too. I guess that's how I would say it. So I think that trying to make it a fun and as stress-free as possible tour for the new girls coming in is a big goal for me because I think that obviously there's going to be nerves and angst for anyone that's getting their first like glimpse of senior team experience. And so making sure that they feel secure and they feel comfortable and they feel part of the group is going to be really important for me.
So this tour is meant as a prep for the upcoming Nation Cup, which we don't have a roster for yet. Is there anything that you're planning that you want to work on or improve before the Nations Cup roster gets named?
Personally or like
Personally.
okay. Um, I think that confidence is always something that can be worked on, especially where I'm at, just getting my first cap soon. I think kind of having confidence in myself and my abilities and playing into my strengths is going to be a big one. But also, I think I want to have confidence in things that I don't consider to be my strengths and feel free to try new things and to put myself outside of my comfort zone a bit because I think that's how I'm going to grow as a player. Um, and I definitely think that like leading into the Nations Cup roster, but also just like being on the team in general, I think that um, the goal is to get better and to improve as a player and to grow leading up to the 2026 World Cup in LA in 2028. So kind of putting myself outside my comfort zone this tour, I think is something I'm going to try my best to do.
Is there anything off the field that you are looking forward to for this tour?
Um, I mean, I haven't been on a tour in a while. So I'm excited to spend more time with the girls. And there's a lot of new girls, so there's a lot of girls that I don't know as well. They've been kind of in and out throughout the fall a little bit. So I've gotten to know some of them, but definitely just like getting to know people better. And also New Zealand, it's summer there, so it's warm. And I've never been, so definitely excited to see a new area of the world too.
New Zealand usually is one of the top favorites of all the players when we ask.
Yeah.
It's there, and then for the people who went on the 21's World Cup, it's South Africa.
Yeah, I loved it was a that was a very cool cultural experience. I loved South Africa.
All right, and then our last question of this section is, what's your favorite part about being on t Team USA?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, being able to say my job is playing field hockey is a pretty cool thing that I didn't think I was going to be able to do. Um, so that's definitely one. Also, just playing a sport at such a high level, I think takes a lot of discipline and can be very taxing mentally and physically, but it's so far been really rewarding to be a part of a group that cares so much about a team's potential and where a team's going, especially working up to Paris and now looking at this new cycle for the 2026 World Cup and 2028 Olympics. I think that kind of full team mentality of pushing ourselves to get better is really cool. And it just like makes me excited to go to training every day and to be a part of it.
Right, so now we're going to get into the fun questions, even though all questions have been fun. So our first one is we normally ask Wawa or Sheets, but you are from New Jersey. So what is your Wawa order?
Oh, I haven't been to Wawa in a while. I really like their chicken nuggets, I think. It's been like 3 years though since I've been there, which is really crazy.
All right. Do you have any game day superstitions?
Yes. Energy drink and Rice Krispie treat.
Like it. Are you a coffee or tea person?
Coffee.
And what is your go-to coffee order?
Mm, an Americano with just milk. Pretty plain.
Who's your favorite teammate to room with?
Oh, um, well, I live with Bethany Dykema actually in
Okay.
Charlotte, so technically I live with her, room with her all the time.
What is your pregame meal?
Oh, I guess it depends when the game is, but normally like some iteration of eggs and toast or a turkey sandwich. And then like right before I go out on the field, Rice Krispie treat.
Show are you binge watching or what book are you reading?
I just finished binge watching Lioness, and I am reading the sixth and seventh book of Throne of Glass series.
All right. Then our last question. What is the most random or interesting thing that you have packed for this upcoming tour?
Oh, well, I guess interesting. We have a new sponsor, so all of our gear is Capelli. So we just got all of our new gear. This is one of the things. I don't know if you can see it, but it says
Oh,
USA. So that's definitely interesting. I haven't, we leave in less than 24 hours and I haven't actually packed yet, so I'm not sure about the random yet.
Well, as of like 11 a.m., Fia hadn't packed either, so I wouldn't be worried.
I feel like I have tomorrow, even though I really don't. I'm telling myself I have tomorrow,
you
which
do.
might get me in trouble, but hopefully I'll be okay.
Yeah. If anyone wants to see the new merch, I know Fia has a TikTok. I want to
Yes.
say Cassie posted hers this morning. You can search it. I'm sure the new merch will be there. It looks
Yeah.
pretty good. I'm
Yeah,
excited
it's
about it.
been awesome. We have some nice backpacks, um, cool sweat set. It's pretty nice. Our uniforms are really nice. I love them.
All right, so that's been it with Caroline. Make sure to watch the game that is not at 1 a.m. We'll put the link down below. It's on USA Field Hockey's website. And I don't know what the time or the date of that game is, but it's okay.
It's okay.
Um,
I'll figure it out before then.
well, it will be down below. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.